Well, tell me, mama, what's going on? Tell me, darling, what's going on?
All right, everybody, welcome back. Episode number 4 of the Bacon and Egg Show. Kerry here with Jay. We got a lot to hit on today. Jay, what's going on?
What's up, man? Just hanging out. Beautiful day out here. I'm out here in old Gee Rage, which is basically my man cave. You can, check out the old dartboard set up there. I'm pretty proud of that one. Can't wait till this is over to have you over. We can play a little darts back here, man.
I know, maybe a live stream of the Bacon and Egg Show from Village Lane.
I like that. Yeah. I am the unofficial mayor of Village Lane. That's what they tell me. So.
Well, then that makes it official. If you're being told, then I think you're all set.
Yeah, at least multiple twos of people have told me that. So it's got to be,
If it's not yourself and it's more than one, and it's not your spouse, then I'd say it's official.
Boom, I'm in. So, excellent. Well, excellent. Now looking forward to getting the conversation going today, man. Yeah, I got a lot of stuff to talk about.
Yeah, let's do it. Yeah, we got quite a list. It's amazing how little actual sports are occurring, but we have a lot to talk about. There's a lot that's been going on, a lot in the news. Let's go ahead and open up today's show with the cup of coffee. Jay, you want to lead it off? Yeah, we got. It's not bacon and eggs without a cup of coffee, right? So
yeah, here we go. As this cup will tell you, I am the world's greatest director of operations. So that is a little teaser. Title.
Little teaser for a surprise for those who are. We want you to stick with this. There's a little surprise at the end of the show. I'll say that's related to coffee, related to bacon and eggs. It's a very special surprise that came in this week from one of our listeners. So
very good. Well, let's go ahead and open up this cup of coffee segment. I wanted to first thing I want to talk about today was the manager of Arsenal, Mikel Arteta, reached out to the head coach of the Rams because of his reputation as a progressive and innovative, coach and trainer. I thought that was pretty interesting that a soccer manager would reach out to an NFL guy, but that's McVay's reputation,
Yeah, and I think it'd be too easy to just jump straight to the Kroenke connection and just say, oh, well, it's the Rams. Of course he's, this was probably facilitated or something like that. I actually don't think that's the case. I think if you know about Mikel Arteta and the way that he wants to run the club at Arsenal, I think there is a great comparison between him and McVay in terms of kind of how they view running their respective organizations. So I think it's fantastic. I think, just kind of reaching across, literally across the pond to discuss, you can't really argue with McVay's track record, right? He's been in the playoffs 2 out of 3 years, took the Rams to a Super Bowl. I know last year was kind of a, down year for them, but they still had a winning record. I love it. I think it's cool to see these kinds of meetings happen, to kind of have these young, innovative coaches bounce ideas off each other.
Well, and Sean McVay has that reputation, where if you've taken a breath in the same room as him, you're going to get another job somewhere because of it. He gives you that rub, So, he does have that reputation of being a guy that can put people into a position to be successful. And I think that's even at a young age, because I believe he's the youngest head coach in the league. I don't know that for a fact, but if he's not, he's down there. So
yeah, he's at the ripe old age of 34.
Right. So even at that age, which is unheard of for an NFL coach, as you know, to have him fielding phone calls from managers of other professional sports, because of his reputation is pretty impressive.
Yeah, absolutely. So moving on through the cup of coffee here, Little League World Series, another sporting event that was kind of thrown into the trash bin with this coronavirus stuff, just outright canceled. Are you a fan of the Little League World Series? Do you watch it? What are your thoughts?
It's one of those things where, I'll watch anything where I know the competition's going to be good. So as the tournament would go on, I would find myself watching the semifinals, the finals, and then the international finals, those sort of things, because I know the quality is going to be that, all those teams are great. I'm not interested until it gets closer to the end. I'm not following those teams that, I have no interest in following any team in particular, even if it's like a local team. I don't, unless my kid's playing on it. But I would just get interested towards the end of that thing. What about you?
Yeah, kind of the same. I mean, unless there was some kind of, it was always hard for it to capture my attention, unless it was something like you mentioned, like a local team. There was some kind of story that put it out in the news and amplified it a little bit to where it's like, oh, well, this is something that's, worth checking out. Even if there was the, suspicion of an 18-year-old pitcher on one of the teams or something like that,
That
and
would
so
never happen.
no, it never happened before.
Never.
So yeah, I
Multiple
mean,
times.
it's a bummer that it got canceled along with the rest of the sporting world, but it's in terms of what it's going to do for did it really affect my kind of day to day, or didn't really register too much with me. So
Yeah. How about Frank Gore signing with the Jets at the ripe old age of 37? So he's 3 years older than Sean McVay, who is the coach of the Rams. He's signing at running back. He's not a punter. He's not a kicker. He's a running back. And he's signed a contract to play at the age of 37 with the Jets. How impressive is that to you?
I struggle sometimes getting out of bed in the morning, like my back aches, knees hurt, and I couldn't imagine. I just could not imagine going through the physical beat down that is the National Football League at 37 years old. It's incredible. Without going to, I know this could be a deep discussion later on, but like, the fact that people are kind of arguing about whether Frank Gore is a future Hall of Famer or not, I think is kind of ridiculous. I mean, where is he at now? The fifth or fourth all-time leading rusher. He's still playing at 37. Third. And
third. Yeah.
How is this even in question at this point? It's just, it's amazing. Any superlative you want to put on it, it's just incredible.
Yeah, he's definitely had a very nice career, very consistent career, and always been a very dependable player for any team that he's played on. So I think that the Jets, you can't go wrong. He's going to play until he can't anymore. I don't know that Frank Gore ever wants to do anything besides play football. So when you see this, he's working as hard as he can, and he's going to play until he physically cannot do what he does anymore. And I get that that's a normal reason to retire, but no, literally, this guy's going to milk every ounce of everything he has to play football for as long as he can. And I love it. I hope he plays for 4 more years. I hope he plays running back till he's in his 40s. What a story that would be. I think it'd be great.
Yeah, and I'd like to see him get a ring. It's one of those, but that's what kind of makes him signing with the Jets. Right. Usually a guy, a player of his advanced age in the NFL is not going to sign with the Jets.
Right.
It happens, but like, it's not of his, like a player of his stature, usually he's going to be, it would be like, oh, he's going to go sign with Baltimore or Kansas City as kind of a backup and, kind of ride the train to go get his ring. But
vulture.
Yeah, and just kind of ride along and hopefully win the Super Bowl at the end of the year. But I think, and that's what the guy just wants to play ball. And signing with the Jets just says, like, I'm going to play. It's so very interesting. We'll see how it plays out. I agree. I hope he sticks around the league for a while, whether it's playing or, the guy is not going to just disappear from football when he's done playing. So let's see. One more thing in the cup of coffee here. These NCAA violations coming out for Kansas and Louisville. This kind of piggybacks off of our discussion in previous shows about the NCAA players receiving payment. What the hell is going on here? What is happening at these schools? It's their Adidas schools, conveniently,
right? We had this conversation last week. For anybody that thinks this hasn't been going on for a long time at this level of violations, like Louisville, one of Louisville's violations, the toughest one, the level 1 violation was Adidas offered money directly to a recruit and assistant coaches. That's a level 1 violation, one of the worst level you could get. Level 2 violations that they had: impermissible contact and transportation of a recruit and failure to promote an atmosphere of compliance. Basically, that's just saying they weren't paying attention to, or they were allowing things to go on. If they were paying attention, they were allowing things to go on that did not comply with the rules of the NCAA. The Kansas stuff with the Adidas bag man, that they, even if they didn't feel good about having him around, it was Adidas. They're an Adidas school, like you mentioned. So that's sort of what comes. It's a part of the territory now with the amount of money that's being spent and going around behind the scenes. This has been happening for a long time. It's continuing to happen, and now there's just people are getting caught, and it's being brought more to light. And it's some of the bigger schools. Kansas basketball, that is a big time program.
It's Kansas. It's Kansas. I mean, it's the same. They're at the same stature that we talk about in college football with the Alabamas and the Notre Dames and USCs of I mean, they are one of the top 3 or 4 blue bloods in college basketball. I mean,
Sure.
Kentucky, Duke, North Carolina, Kansas. I mean, I'm sure that some other schools would kind of want to be lumped in that as well. But I mean, for me, that's it. Those are the blue blood programs. And I mean, I'm pretty sure that Nike's not doing something similar, right?
Yeah. Oh no, it's just Adidas.
It's just Adidas. I mean,
Yeah,
isolated
right.
case, just a couple of big name schools that have won national championships in recent memory. Yeah, and I'm sure Nike's not involved with Duke and North Carolina and Kentucky and Texas. However you want to go down. It's all just so ridiculous. Like, really, the FBI getting involved in this kind of stuff when, I mean, I get why. I mean, there are legal factors in this, but when can we just end the charade?
I hope soon.
Amateur athletes.
I hope that student athletes.
Right.
I think that I hope that what we talked about last week with the name, image, and likeness, players being able to benefit off of that. I hope this is the beginning of the door coming off of all of this, and we're everybody can be more comfortable with being paid to be an Adidas athlete at this point, or this the money can be out in the open, and the way that it should be, to be honest with you. And these players do deserve to get that money. So I'm not mad at those players for doing that, but I'm the situation is, it's the rules are the rules, and these schools broke the rules, and they're being taken to task for it now.
Yeah. I mean, to hit on that level 1 violation. Like, let's kind of change this real quickly with the talking about the name, image, and likeness thing. Instead of Adidas offering money directly to recruits and to assistant coaches under name, image, and likeness, what if Adidas just offered money to the recruit? They sponsored by Adidas. They did Adidas ads, of course, with the new name, image, and likeness thing. They can't wear any of their school's colors or reference them or their logos or anything. But I mean, what's wrong with that? Like, so Adidas won't be giving money to assistant coaches at that point. Well, why would they really need to if they're already signing a direct deal with the athlete?
Money. Like the assistant coaches they're on salary. They don't need to make money for the connection. That money needs to go to the players.
Yeah. So under the name, image, and likeness, if Adidas did this, where I don't see any kind of problem with that. Like, the coaches are allowed to coach at that point and recruit, and Adidas can do whatever ad work they want to do behind the scenes. It won't involve when you start involving guys like Rick Pitino. I mean, I guess you're gonna it's naturally there's going to be some kind of action going on in the back of a restroom, under a table, or back of a restaurant under the table, but
if you will.
Yeah, it's a shame he pulled out of that action with Louisville, but it's
real shame.
Yeah, or I guess he didn't, but but that's what I mean. I just don't see the issue with it. I don't know why there's this kind of pearl clutching that happens over college athletes getting paid. And I mean, it's happening everywhere. Let's just end it and get on with it.
Yeah. And then last thing on this is, how long until the players are making more money than the coaches?
Well, I mean,
and is that a problem?
I don't think it's a
'Cause I don't-
problem. I mean, they're the
I don't
ones that
think it is
actually are
either.
producing it. I mean,
Right.
that's the case in the professional leagues.
Right. No, I don't have a
You
problem
know,
with it either. But
no,
I
I don't
just
have a
wanted
problem
to.
with it. I mean, it's if
Yeah.
anything, it's it's the most reasonable outcome. I mean, it's the players are the ones on the court that are taking teams to Final Fours or football playoffs and stuff like that, and they should be, they should be recognized for such. It's I think it's getting there. I mean, it's kind of a slow moving process, but I think it is. I think it is getting there.
Yep. All right. Let's put a lid on this cup of coffee and move on.
All right, it's done. So in other news, we've got another big thing that happened. I think this was this past Thursday night, the NFL schedule release. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah. I mean, the first place I looked was the Texans, of course, and that September is not very kind.
No.
I mean, you open up. It's the opening night of the season, and you're at Arrowhead Stadium. You're at Kansas City. I mean, that's great. I think it's a great opportunity for the Texans to be showcased in that opening night game. And Watson's a star. And I get why the NFL decided like that is the opening night matchup. I told that's a star powered event. So I get it. And we'll find out a lot about Houston in that first game. But at the Chiefs, then you get the Ravens at home, and then you go to Pittsburgh. That's a tough September for the Texans there.
And
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, in October doesn't get any easier. I mean, I guess relative to Kansas City and Baltimore, it does. But just looking real quickly, and we can get into more detail on this on the other side. We get deeper into the Texans, but they have their bye week 8. So after at Kansas City, Baltimore, and at Pittsburgh in September, then they get the Vikings in town, Jacksonville, but at Tennessee and then Green Bay. That's the first 7 games of the season going into the bye. Is 2 wins, 3 wins? What is a what's a what
Well,
I mean?
I think they could come out of there if they play like when we talk about the players outplaying their coaching. The Texans are capable of coming out of there 4-3, 5-2. I wouldn't be surprised.
5-2 would be a huge success, I think. 5-2 would be.
I agree, but if they came out of there 4-3, would you be shocked?
No, I think 4-3 would actually be a fair. Like, I think that's a fairly reasonable.
Would you also be
success.
shocked if they came out of there 2-5?
No, not at all. And
So
that's why
that's a tough. That's why that's such a tough beginning to that before their bye week, and the bye week comes at a really great time for them.
Yeah, and that's where for a coach that really needs to get the good graces of fans back on his side, I think a 2-5 start in that opening 7 is does not bode well.
No,
if
not at
that's
all.
the case, but we can get into that a little further about Bill O'Brien's situation after the break.
Yeah.
But
and then the other thing that stood out to me on the schedule was the AFC North. All 4 AFC North teams are in the top 6 easiest schedules. But the one that really stands out to me, and we just mentioned them a little bit ago because they play Houston, is Baltimore. So they go the Ravens schedule. They do have to play the Chiefs, but they get them in Baltimore. They have to play the Titans, which was obviously, going back to the playoffs, the Titans, the great game there. But they get the Titans at home as well. They only have one back-to-back where they play road games back-to-back. They only have to do that one time the entire season. They don't leave the Eastern time zone after week 2. And that game is the Houston game. They don't even travel across. They don't have to travel across. They don't have to travel out of the time zone after week 2.
that's amazing. It's almost like Baltimore joined the SEC. How'd they get that
That's a pretty
cush
sweet
of
deal.
time zone movement there?
No kidding. And then
God.
obviously, because of that, they're traveling the fewest miles of any team this season. And it's also the fewest in the last 4 years. So Baltimore, not only did we both love their draft, not only are they bringing back a great team already, but they also have this schedule that lines up very nicely for them. So, with
Yeah.
Baltimore being the number 1 seed to me is right now they're the favorite in the AFC for me to come out of there as the number 1 seed.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, they couldn't ask for anything better, but as the NFL tends to do, there's always the great equalizer. It takes one bad hit on Lamar Jackson, anything like that, and obviously all bets are off. But if they can stay healthy, they're it's collision course with KC,
Yep.
which is great. I mean, talk about, how exciting would that be? I know that's what everybody wanted to see this past season until Tennessee had other ideas, but yeah, you couldn't ask for a better spot to be in, at this point. So, anything else stood out to you about the draft? Any other? I know we talked about the Texans a little bit. We'll get deeper into that, but I don't know if you've seen the Cowboys schedule. We talk about how brutal the opening 7 weeks for the Texans are. I was looking at the Cowboys schedule, and to me, it's there was this discussion on the local radio here yesterday about how really the Cowboys are probably going to be favored in 6 out of their 7 games. And just to go through it real quickly, they're at the Rams to open up the season. I think opening up that new building there, if that actually is going to turn out being the case with coronavirus and whatnot, but that's a game the Cowboys can win. Then it's the Falcons at home, another completely winnable game. The trickiest one is going to be at Seattle. I think everybody knows what playing there is going to be like. But then Cleveland at home, Giants at home, Cardinals at home on Monday night, which could be a tricky one for the Cowboys. But since that game is at home, I think that they're capable of pulling that off. But talk about that's an interesting primetime game there on Monday night with the Cardinals. And then at Washington in week 7, we talk about what would be, a good first 7 for the Texans. I think anything worse than 5-2 for the Cowboys out of that first 7 is going to be kind of frowned upon a little bit. I mean, I
That'd be
think
a letdown. That'd be a letdown for McCarthy. It really would. I think that would be. I think he wants to come in with some momentum, and get the ball rolling. And I think anything less than that, like a 5-2 start, I think will, even though in that division that still may be good enough to have a 4-3 will still be probably good enough to be on top of that division at that point in the season. I
yeah,
still feel like he'll be. McCarthy will be feeling the pressure as coach to really string some wins together. You're right. Going to Seattle, everybody knows how tough it is to play in Seattle. That's one of the toughest places to win, period. No matter if the Seahawks are up or down, it's hard to go into Seattle and win. The Cardinals are bringing in that great draft. Another year of development for Kyler Murray, another year of Kingsbury having his system in place there. I'm looking forward to that game, actually. That was a matchup that I circled when I saw that on the schedule as well.
yeah, that was a good get for Monday Night Football. That's going to be a good one.
Yeah, because the Monday Night Football games, the Sunday night games really have seemed to become the premier matchup of the week on the schedule, and the Monday night games sort of seem to be maybe an afterthought. The scheduling just doesn't seem to line up that the Monday night games are the premier matchups. So that will be it's the Cowboys anyway, so that's obviously eyes on the television. But the Cardinals I think will be playing well enough at that level of the season to also bring some eyes to that matchup as well that might not have watched it otherwise.
Yeah, for sure. And to kind of just quickly go through the rest of their schedule. I mean, after that, week 8 they go to Philly. That's a Sunday night game. That's always going to be a tricky environment, night game in Philly. But how good is Philly actually going to be this year? Pittsburgh goes to Dallas the following week. Could be an interesting game. And then they hit their bye. Now this is where it gets interesting for the Cowboys. Is after the bye, they go to Minnesota, which that's a tough environment, a tricky game. Washington at home, then at Baltimore, at Cincinnati, at home against the 49ers on Sunday night, hosting Philly at New York. Now, those last 2, pretty winnable, but that stretch where Minnesota, 2 weeks later Baltimore, 2 weeks later San Francisco, that's not easy. And that's where if, McCarthy wants to have a really successful season, they need to load up on those wins in the front end of the schedule, because I don't know if they're quite at the level yet to start knocking off the 49ers and at Baltimore and at Minnesota. That's a pretty rugged into the season there.
It sure would be nice to be 8-2 going into those last 6 games. the Redskins they always play the Cowboys stuff no matter what. But I guess the last 5 games is what stands out to me. At Baltimore, the Bengals at that point in the season, Burrow will have played an entire, he's going to get all the snaps there, and they're not going to have anything to lose at that point in the season. They won't have a great record, but it's usually when those teams start to go, build a little bit of momentum because it's cohesive and they've been together for a while. So, going to Cincinnati in December,
No,
that's a
that's
wild
not.
card for me.
Yeah, that's not a gimme game.
Having the 49ers at home is nice, but it's still the 49ers, which will play them tough. Shanahan's going to have them ready to come in and play the Cowboys there. And then you got the 2 divisional games, Eagles and the Giants at the end. They need to stack up at the beginning. You're absolutely right. If they don't, McCarthy is going to have a problem on his hands at the end of the season, because that's a tough way to – if they get through all those games and, if they go 3-2 of those games, I think that's what they're going to have to do. But that's all I can expect from them out of those 5
Yeah,
last.
yeah, and I think you mentioned it earlier. The division sets up well for the Cowboys to go 9-7, 10-6, and still being a good, still win that.
Yep.
Philly's kind of the wild card for me. They could be. We don't know. I mean, we don't know what they're going to be, what Wentz and that crew is going to turn out to be, this season. But yeah, you're right. If they clean up early on in the schedule, they won't have so much to worry about if they do lose those games later on. But yeah, so I think, be interesting kind of, it's always kind of guesswork with these schedules. We never really know how it's going to turn out, but still fascinating to see how balanced or unbalanced they might be. One more quick thing on the Cowboys before we take a break. What did you make of the Andy Dalton signing?
I thought it was great. I mean, I think it's smart for Dalton at this point in his career to take a year and just get healthy, get his body right. Because obviously you're signing it as a backup, thinking that Dak Prescott is going to play the entire season at quarterback for the Cowboys. If something goes wrong, Dalton will be plenty prepared to step into that role. But I think in terms of Dalton's career, it's good for him to be able to come in as a backup in Dallas and just play that role for the time being. And then maybe next year, if he's healthy, there might be a team that's looking for a starting quarterback, and he might be the right guy for them at that point. If not, I think Dalton's a guy that's going to be able to just collect a paycheck as a backup for a long time if he chooses. And Dallas is a great spot for him. Dallas is lucky to have gotten him, and Dak Prescott is lucky to have Andy Dalton in that quarterback room as well. I think it's great signing for Dallas.
Yeah, I'd love the signing. I mean, I think, like you mentioned, what he can do stepping in for Dak if he gets banged up, I don't have any doubt that he can run that offense and that McCarthy can game plan correctly for him. I think, Dalton's kind of become a little bit of a punching bag over the years, but he's kind of been viewed as a joke in a way. But like, the guy took Cincinnati to 5 playoff appearances?
Yeah, the Bengals.
The Bengals.
Yeah.
And
drug him there.
yeah,
I mean, he had a little bit of help, but not much. I mean, you got AJ Green and
him and AJ Green and some decent defenses, and that was about it. And
yeah.
That's Cincinnati. I think we've been talking a lot about value, whether it's draft and all these things the last few weeks. And I mean, you essentially got a starter quality quarterback that's willingly coming there to be a backup. And honestly, I wouldn't be all that surprised if Dalton's at that point in his career where he's totally fine with that role from here on out.
Yep.
You get to a certain age, how much do you want to continue to just get beat up and get your head knocked in? He's a TCU guy, so I know he's from Katy, but it's local enough, and you get to
Still has a house in Fort Worth.
Yeah, and there's no more beloved player on a football team than the backup quarterback, so he gets to go be the most beloved Dallas Cowboy now. And well, argue that point, I guess Cowboy fans probably would, but like, what a great spot to be in for him.
Being the backup quarterback for the Dallas Cowboys, it's a pretty nice spot to be, especially for a quarterback at the stage in Dalton's career. It's a great spot. It's a great spot for anybody, especially for Dalton. So, all around good for win-win for everybody. I read an article. The author said that, oh, this is leverage for the Cowboys because, now that they have Dalton in the fold, and I don't think I don't think it's going to affect anything in the negotiations with Dak. I've been saying from the start, they're going to end up paying Dak Prescott $40 million a year. He's going to be their quarterback of the future, barring anything catastrophic. And Dalton is solely coming in to play the role of backup quarterback and mentor to Dak Prescott. That's
Yeah,
all it is for me.
I completely agree. If this was Cam Newton we were talking about, I would maybe say that could be a little bit, MVP a few years ago, a
Right.
guy that clearly wants to be the starter somewhere. If that was the case, I'd say maybe that is a leverage kind of thing, signing Cam on a 1-year deal to kind of press Dak into signing a contract or, on more Cowboy friendly terms. But no, I don't think that's it. I think it was a great signing for the Cowboys. And, the last time the Cowboys had a redheaded backup quarterback, Jerry fell in love and had a future
Made him
head
his
coach
head coach
there.
for a
Yeah.
decade.
Yeah. So who knows? Maybe this is maybe Andy Dalton coach in waiting for the Cowboys at some point. Which I guess wouldn't be all that shocking if you think about it. But it's
Not at
yeah,
all.
it's a great signing. I think yeah, and I agree. I think Dak's going to get his money, as we've talked about on here before, and it's an upgrade for the Cowboys, and it's a lot better option than Cooper Rush, and they're setting up well.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Yeah, it was a good signing for sure.
Well, I think it's about time for a break. We'll step away here for a second. On the other side, we'll get into the Houston Texans, get a little bit more into their schedule, and what would Bill O'Brien do? Talk about some contracts and kind of see where the Texans are looking to start off this coming season. So we'll be back in just a minute. Welcome back, everybody. After that nice little short break, waiting on Jay to come back here in just a sec, but we're going to be kicking off the second half of the show talking Houston Texans, getting into their draft a little bit, the contract situation, and also the schedule. So once Jay gets back, we'll dig a little bit deeper into that.
Oh, yeah. Did I hear something about the Texans?
Oh, man, what a delight. What a treat today. So, Jay, God, it's too bad Jay's going to miss this. We've got Toro Queso joining us here to discuss the Texans, I guess.
Yeah, that's right, brother. You got the Toro Queso here to talk a little bit about one particular player that the Texans drafted. It's Charlie Heck, the 6'8", 311-pound tackle out of North Carolina. He's going to play swing tackle. He could go to either side. He's going to be great depth. He's the son of an All-American, a first-round pick, and a long-time NFL starter. So believe that Charlie Heck is going to be the guy to fill in any gap on the offensive line for the Texans.
Oh man, this is great. It's a shame Jay's missing out on this. If Toro Case is a fan of Charlie Heck, then I
gotta go. No, I gotta go. I'll see you later.
Never know what's going to happen on this show. Unbelievable. Can't believe Jay missed that. Well, just incredible. What a breakdown. I mean, God, I thought he'd get a little bit more into contract situation on the offensive line, but hey, if he's a fan of the pick. Oh, there's Jay.
Hey, man, sorry to keep you waiting. What's up?
No worries. Welcome back.
You get the Texans talk going?
I mean, if there's anything left to talk about, I mean, Toro Queso just stopped by and did a complete breakdown of the Charlie Heck pick, which is pretty solid.
Stop by where?
You had the garage open, so I think he just popped in and, dropped some knowledge on the offensive line pick, and he was out.
Which one? Who was he talking about?
Charlie Heck. He hit the whole thing.
He heard me talking about that last night. He heard me talking. I must have just missed him. There's no way. I don't know how I didn't see him right out of here.
Hey, maybe next week. I don't know. Maybe we'll
Well,
cross paths again. But
I'm sure he's right, because I think Charlie Heck is going to be one of those players that's going to play an important role for Houston this year. But man, I guess
well,
I'm guessing he covered all the bases we needed to on him.
yeah, hey, he pretty much did. I mean, he hit the measurables, everything. So he's a big fan of the pick, apparently.
Yeah, I think so too. Oh well.
All
Well,
right.
what else? Let's dive into what our friend Bill O'Brien would do. What would he do?
Well, let's see. What kind of situation is he dealing with here? I know we were talking about the schedule situation earlier,
Right.
and it's not well. I guess he is the general manager, so this would be a what would Bill O'Brien do situation. But if the Texans are 2-5 heading into the bye week, what would GM Bill O'Brien do to the head coach Bill O'Brien?
I think General Manager Bill O'Brien would look at head coach Bill O'Brien and say, Bill, you got to do better, Bill. And it starts with you. You got to coach better. You got to prepare the players better. And then Coach Bill O'Brien will go and he'll say that to the media because that's his go-to response. And then we'll be in the same exact place that we were beforehand. So I don't know. I could see 2-5 being a possible start for Houston. I don't think that they'll go 2-5, but that's a tough schedule. And you get a couple of wrong bounces. Things don't go your way early on. And then you're behind the eight ball for the rest of the season. You're playing from behind, and teams like Indianapolis are looking to take a step forward. Tennessee is coming off of a fantastic season, and you never know what you're going to get down there with the Jags. So
Yeah,
can't get behind early in the season in the division.
I think if they, I mean, yeah, I think 2-5 is kind of worst case. 0-7 I think is worst case, but 2-5 is not. I don't think is what's going to happen, but I think if that did turn out to be the start that they had going into the bye week, I think history has shown that Bill O'Brien's first move is to change play callers, and they just hired a new play caller, and I think he's going to go, oh, I'm going to take responsibility for this and call plays the rest of the way, which could end up, bringing them back out of the gutter a little bit to an 8-8 or type season, which again is kind of standard. But I guess I'm really curious to see with that kind of start to the season where the players are with Bill O'Brien, dealing away a guy that by all impressions, indicate a guy that was very well loved within the locker room, face of the one of the faces of the organization. What does that do for a team that, especially with the manner that they lost in Kansas City in the playoffs, going up to Kansas City on opening night, and if they get the doors blown off, what does that do for player confidence in the coaching staff? And that's where I could see things getting ugly really quickly. And if the players are essentially turning on Bill O'Brien within the first 3 weeks of the season, what choice does that really leave Cal McNair? And I know if at least in terms of really putting him on the hot seat, I know they're not going to fire him after a few games or even during the season, but that for me, that's the most fascinating part, is to see what the players look like in terms of attitude and stuff towards Bill O'Brien. Do the relationships start to break down over the course of the season if they're not winning games?
Well, let's look at it from the other perspective too. What if you go to Kansas City on opening night, the night the hang their banner, and you win? How does that set the tone for a season in terms of a locker room morale, getting that momentum going on a very, very tough beginning of the schedule? And that's how from the other side of that too, he could also really set the tone and make a lot of people forget that he traded DeAndre Hopkins, at least momentarily, make them forget. If you go into Kansas City on opening night, on banner night, and you beat them, you beat the defending champs. And so I think that's what's staring him in the face, and staring all these players in the face, staring the franchise in the face. This is now the biggest game in the history of the franchise, in my opinion, week one, to set the tone for the direction that this franchise is going to go. They don't have to win the game. I'm not saying that they have to win the game in Kansas City, but to set the tone for the direction of the franchise with Bill O'Brien as a head coach moving forward, the tone will be set week one in Kansas City, and I'm really looking forward to watching that matchup.
Yeah, I think you're hitting it right on the head in that the tone for the season will be set. Now, do we know which either way it goes, that's going to be the tone for the season. And but see, it's just for me, it's just classic Bill O'Brien and in his tenure with the Texans. In that last year, they beat Kansas City in the regular season. They beat New England in the regular season last year. And even if they do beat Kansas City to open up the season, and who knows against Baltimore, we're still. I think it's still going to be a case of a team that's going to just be mediocre to a little bit better than mediocre, that's going to get into the playoffs and shit the bed again like they have under Bill O'Brien previously. And that's where it's here's a question, and this is something maybe we can hit on a little bit further in the coming weeks, but like for the long-term health of the franchise in terms of winning football games and fan engagement and frustration and all those kinds of things, would it be better for Bill O'Brien to just come out of the gate with this team getting crushed? Does that accelerate the process? Because I don't think Bill O'Brien is I think it's pretty clear at this point he's not the answer if the Texans want to win a Super Bowl. And does getting your doors blown off by Kansas City and then Baltimore and getting out to that rough start just accelerate the process and get this thing over with to where the Texans can start focusing on moving forward?
Well, I remember at the beginning of last season, we weren't very happy with the product early on. And then out of nowhere, they went on this run of games where it all seemed to string together. So I don't think that it necessarily will, I know it's really easy to say that game one of the season will set the tone for the season, but I truly mean like how they respond after trading DeAndre Hopkins, after all of the, after the draft, maybe not after the, the blow up, yelling at the whoever on camera during the middle of the draft, having all that happen. Like he has an opportunity here, even in defeat, to get people to move past that. And I think that that's going to be very, very big in terms of the grand scheme of Bill O'Brien getting over again with Houston Texans, with the majority of Houston Texans fans. But the beginning of this, I don't know that it'll expedite anything because we've seen him build a team back up again only to fail, like the crash and burn.
Right.
Like the build last year was higher than ever. It was like, we're here. And then it was the ultimate just off a cliff.
Yeah. The higher the rise and just the harder the crashing down. And
right.
I guess I'll pose a couple questions here about what does this season look like for Bill O'Brien to get back into the good graces with Texans fans? Like at the end of the season, and I know we've talked about Kansas City and Baltimore
and championship.
So getting to the AFC championship game.
Yep.
If the Texans get to the conference title game, then you think that kind of erases.
That's what it's going to take for me. Because we've got, we've seen them get to the second round before, and how many times have we seen that? Where we get to that point, and it's, they're taking take the next step. Oh, they're gonna, and then they trip over their own feet. Bill O'Brien, decides not to be able to manage a game like normal, and you get what you get. So
yeah. And I think to piggyback off that, I think, you have to be realistic about it, right? When you look at the AFC, the last few weeks we've been talking constantly about how Baltimore, Kansas City, that's the top of the pile. Like those are the teams on the mountaintop in the AFC, injuries barring and all those kind of caveats. I think people are realistic for the most part about where the Texans fit in the hierarchy of the AFC. Will they probably win the AFC South? Sure, depending on what Indianapolis and Tennessee and those teams that you mentioned do. But, I think them not, I think somebody saying, well, they got to win a Super Bowl for Bill O'Brien. That's ridiculous. I mean, I think we have to be realistic looking at it, and that I think you're right. I think getting to the AFC title game means that they got over the second round hump. It may have very well been at the expense of a Baltimore or a Kansas City, which would be huge. I think that would be
I think it
a
would have
lot.
to be. Yep.
And I mean, similar to Tennessee last season, I kind of what they did, knocking out of Baltimore and then getting to the AFC Championship. So with all that being said, my follow-up question for you on that is, what does Bill O'Brien have to do or change as a coach to get to that point? Because nothing that he's done up to this point has been able to get them over the hump, and that's with DeAndre Hopkins, and that's with these players that he's had.
No, I don't see him having another gear as a coach. Like, I don't know that there is a next step for Bill O'Brien. He could prove me wrong this year. I would love to see it, but in order for him to save his job, I mean, in order for him to, I guess, get with me again, he needs to take the next step. Like, this is not I've said, I talk about Bill O'Brien's ceiling as a coach quite a bit, and it's the second round. When we get through that, and then we know that there's more actually attainable by Bill O'Brien as a head coach, then maybe we can. But to your point, what's been happening has not been working to the level that it takes to win championships.
Right.
And that, to me, is just the coach that Bill O'Brien is. It is who he is. And I mentioned this last week. I believe it was last week. We can't talk like Bill O'Brien hasn't won division championships. Is it 4 out of the last 6 or 5 out of the? He's won quite a few divisions recently. Like, this is in the recent past. So we know he can do that. We know, and that's not something to push away. However, when you know what their ceiling is as a head coach, or when fans feel like they know what their ceiling is for the head coach, that's when the unrest begins. And until he breaks through that ceiling, for me, it won't make nothing that he does will matter.
Yeah,
Period.
and it's very similar to the Jason Garrett situation in Dallas, where
yes,
the
absolutely.
book, the book was written on what Jason Garrett was as a head coach 5 years in, and it eventually came to a head, and he's gone. But that's why, would it's given what we know about Jason Garrett and his tenure with the Cowboys, would it be that surprising if McCarthy gets them to a Super Bowl this year?
No, because I do think that Dak Prescott, I'm not saying he's Tom Brady, but I think Dak Prescott is more than capable of quarterbacking a team to a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
I'm
and
not
with the
saying
weapons that he has around him.
That's it. That's the point right there, is that I'm not saying that he could drag a franchise to Super Bowls with little to no weapons like a Tom Brady. But with weapons around him and the right coaching and a good mentor for a backup quarterback like Andy Dalton, Dak Prescott is absolutely a quarterback that can coach. I mean, that can lead a team to a Super Bowl championship. And would I be surprised if it happened this year? Yeah, because I always said that they won't win another Super Bowl until Jerry Jones isn't the general manager anymore. That's just I just feel like that's going to be the case. However, if it happened, I guess I wouldn't be surprised, because all the pieces are there, and maybe Jerry did it right this time.
Yeah, and we discussed the quality of their draft in that, it's kind of amazing to go like, wow, GM Jerry kind of knocked this one out of the park. That's what. How much does McCarthy, how much does Stephen Jones and the people that are around Jerry at this point have to do with that? But yeah, that's why it wouldn't surprise me the least bit if the Cowboys
but until
made the
you
Super
have
Bowl.
Mike McCarthy in that room, when you have Jason Garrett in that room, we knew what Jason Garrett's ceiling was. Mike McCarthy's won a Super Bowl. We know what his ceiling is, and that's why, when you bring in a Super Bowl winning coach and talent evaluator, because when he was in Green Bay, he had the keys to the castle.
Exactly.
So, I mean, you know what his ceiling is, and that's why you can see it happening now, because Jerry has put the pieces in place finally to make it happen. And maybe he's trying to just, wouldn't that's such a Jerry thing, because he wants to be able to say, I was always going to pay Dak. I just wanted to get a Super Bowl trophy out of him first,
Yeah.
and like that's such a Jerry thing to say, and that to me is it could happen. It could happen. I've never been a Cowboys fan in my life, but I could see
I mean,
that.
but just given the kind of comparison in a way that I'm trying to make with the Texans here, and that the talent is there, and we're talking about a head coach who we clearly have seen what their ceiling is, and that for me, I almost feel like for the best long-term opportunity for this window for the Texans to win a Super Bowl with Deshaun Watson and JJ Watt and the rest, the cast of characters, I think almost the best thing is almost to go like what happened with the final year of Charlie Strong at Texas, crater it out. Because the only way that anything's going to change at this point for the better is to hit rock bottom. And that otherwise it's going to be another 5-6 years of Bill O'Brien trying to just continue to finagle his way around, finishing 9-7 and hoping to, that he catches lightning in a bottle in the playoffs. Otherwise, I mean, think about what another coach could do with this team. And I think that's the most frustrating part, is seeing how it's been built and what they're capable of. And teasing fans with things like beating Kansas City and New England in the regular season. And that's where it's just, what's the best thing for long term, though? That's what I find fascinating. Where last year, to compare it back to the Cowboys again, if Jason Garrett slips into the playoffs, he's probably the coach this year. But because they lost late in the season,
No, you're right.
and they didn't
I
make the
agree. He is the
playoffs,
coach if they
that's
win.
why Jerry had to make the move. And just going 7-9 and missing out barely to the playoffs, get O'Brien out of Houston, I don't think so. But that's where it's kind of similar to the way things fell apart for Kubiak. It just got to a point where it just was done. It ran its course. But who's going to tell O'Brien to leave when he doesn't really have a boss? So.
And maybe, you bring up Kubiak, who then, after he left Houston, went on to do what? Win a Super Bowl in Denver as a head coach. So maybe Bill O'Brien's ceiling as a head coach isn't just the second round, but maybe in Houston, in the situation that he's currently in, that is where his ceiling is, as things are currently.
Yeah, and I think also, I think Tom Herman had mentioned something similar about like kind of being able to delegate and focus more on his job instead of trying to do everybody else's job. And Bill O'Brien, it seems, is trying to do everybody else's job, probably for the sake of his own control. But he doesn't strike me as a bad coach. He's not an unintelligent coach. He's a good football coach. But does he need more of a support around him to just really say, like, look, we'll handle personnel and contracts and all these other things. You just focus on being a head coach of a football team.
See, that's, to me though, I don't know that he's a great head coach or a good head coach in terms of game management and things like that. That to me is the separation, is we've never really seen him in the big spots be able to manage those games and manage a play calling or whatever it is that he needed to be the CEO of at that time. He hasn't shown that he has the ability to do that in the big moments.
Yeah,
So
I agree.
that's where I think the similarities with Garrett are very similar, because at times they showed they had the ability to be a good head football coach.
Yeah.
But then when the chips were down, you saw, you call a spade, and that's what it is. You see what you see. Your eyes don't lie. All those cliche type of deal. It is what it is. That's the best
you
one.
are what you are. All those things, And,
yeah, there you go. Yeah.
But so we got about 10 minutes here, and I think we got a lot left to hit on, and we're going to kind of close out this last 10 minutes with the breakfast wrap. Kind of wrap up this week and hit on a few things. Jay, is there anywhere you want to start in the breakfast wrap?
Yeah, before we really dive into that, Andre Harrell, the founder of Uptown Records, guy discovered Puff Daddy and Mary J. Blige, and was really a big influence on hip hop and R&B in the late '80s and early '90s. He passed away at the age of 59. So it's somebody whose influence on music has been an influence on my musical taste and listening. So obviously that's a big loss for the music industry. So I just wanted to bring that up real quick as we before we got into the breakfast wrap on that stuff. I just wanted to bring that up real quick.
Yeah, and still not a good day for the music industry as the news came out this morning that Little Richard passed away at 87. Man. So that's another, it's a big loss. Talk about influence, I'm sure you just in terms of not just rock and roll, but personality and all those kinds of things. And it's,
yeah, how many performers wanted to be Little Richard? Emulate Little Richard, the movements, the energy, one of the hardest working people that you would see. So yeah, that's another big loss for the music industry for sure.
Yeah, tough day for that. Unfortunately, during this tough time, and we kind of, it seems like every other day or so you get another news about someone passing away. So unfortunate, but
yeah,
so let's get into this breakfast wrap here.
Yeah, wrap it up.
Let's wrap it up. So the one quick thing, another little Texans note, they hired a hygiene coordinator. What do you think about that?
Was it Toro Queso? Did he get that job? I heard he was interested in it.
Oh man, I bet he applied. I bet he had to have applied for it, right?
You know who else I bet applied for it is Bill O'Brien, because he has every other job in that organization, so he probably felt he needed to be hygiene coordinator as well.
What a job title! It's almost like a, master of like custodial engineering or something. Hygiene coordinator. What do you do? What do you do? Just follow players and staff around, just tell them to wash their hands and like. What do you do?
It's literally about keeping the facility clean and giving the players guidance on how to help with that. That's literally what it is. And I guess, to be honest, I haven't heard of a ton of other people doing this. So if they're paying somebody money to help them stay safe, more power to them. And I hope that it's Toro Queso that got that job. We'll find out next week.
I hope so. He's earned it. He's earned it. That should be his gig.
Put in the time, man. Just put in the time.
Well, let's see.
Okay, so UFC 249 is currently, as we record right now, at 11:51 a.m. UFC, I believe it's 249, is scheduled to go on. However, because they were able to acquire 1,200 tests, 1,200 COVID-19 tests, because of that, they were able to hold this event, or they're trying to hold this event. And one of their fighters actually tested positive. So Ronaldo Souza, who was scheduled to fight Uriah Hall tonight, Souza tested positive. The fight is off, but as of right now, the rest of the event is still going on. There's a lot to digest with just that little bit of it, with just a little bit of what I said.
Yeah, depending on how things play out the rest of today, this could be a deeper discussion for next week's show. There's so much to unpack there. The fact that they acquired 1,200 COVID tests when there's a shortage of tests around the country that's a subject in its own right. And then to have a fighter test positive the day before this fight is supposed to go on, we'll see. And obviously, like you mentioned, as we're recording right now, the fight is on. We don't know what's going to happen the rest of the day or into tonight. This can't go on, right? They can't have this.
I don't see how it could still happen. But I guarantee you, Dana White's doing everything in his power to make sure that it continues to happen. There is another way to look at this, is that they acquired the test, somebody tested positive, and so the system worked. They found somebody that tested positive so they could remove them from the situation. I guarantee you that's how this is going to get spun. And I don't think that the event should go on. I don't think it should have even been planned. I don't think it should have been allowed to be planned from the start. However, I feel like that's one way that if it does go on, they're going to be able to spin it in the way that they followed the plan worked, they removed the fighter that had a positive test, and everything went unhitched. And I feel like that's what's going to happen.
Yeah, we'll have to do a recap on how this plays out.
We'll touch on that next week. Maybe even in the cup of coffee.
Yeah, I think we'll have to get in that in the cup of coffee. Speaking of fighting, there was a story that came out a couple days ago that a lifetime Longhorn, Earl Thomas, I don't even know how to really start with this one. The story is
No.
Earl Thomas's wife pulled a gun on Earl, a loaded gun with the safety off, apparently, pistol whipped Earl. And you're going, why would this happen? Well, apparently she walked in on Earl Thomas and Earl Thomas's brother in bed with other women or woman. I don't know if that's the plural there.
I've heard both both sides of that, plural and not, and singular. But either way, go ahead.
So basically, she discovers Earl in bed with women and his brother, and then proceeded to pistol whip him. I don't really have too much else to add to this. It's.
Earl,
do you have anything? Do you have any? Yeah, I don't have any.
Yeah.
You know.
Earl, don't do that.
Yeah, don't do that, Earl. And yeah, it's just not a good idea all around. So
I mean, that doesn't. I'm not saying she had the right to pistol whip him with a loaded gun, but with the safety off. I'm not saying that she had the right to do that, but it's like, okay, kind of.
It reminds me of the scene in Goodfellas where Henry Hill wakes up and wife is over him in bed with the gun right at his nose. You know, it's yeah, come on, Earl. I know
Be better, Earl. Be better than that, buddy. Hope you're getting through this rough
You're
time.
a Baltimore Raven, man. That organization doesn't have any history of any kind of gun play or knife play or anything that happens off the field, man. You got to clean it up.
Allegedly, yep. Allegedly.
So what else we got
so
here?
Peyton Manning and Tiger Woods are teaming up to play against Phil Mickelson and Tampa Bay, Tom Brady. They're going to do a little charity golf event. And the smack talk has begun. You know, those two, Peyton is a notorious smack talker, and Brady's amped up his game quite a bit as well in that department. So I'm sure it'll be an interesting watch. But are you looking forward to this?
Is that on pay-per-view, or is that going to be on?
I don't know. I just know it'll probably be one of those things. I hope it's not on like Bleacher Report pay-per-view or something like that. Like if they put that on NBC, that would draw like a 35 rating. Everybody and their mother would watch that. Like,
yeah, I think that'll kind of determine my amount. I definitely find it intriguing, and I think that dynamic, you know, you kind of have Peyton and Tiger on one side where, you know, Peyton is a Hall of Famer, obviously. He's one of the greatest quarterbacks ever to play. But then you got on the other side, one of the only quarterbacks that you can really say is clearly better than him. And is he going to wear his 6 rings out to the course and try to wear those and play? Like,
I sure hope so. I sure hope he walks up, because there's that little video of Brady that it's at the one some sort of celebration, and he's like, you know, being a typical Tom Brady, you know, like whatever, and he's got the rings on his finger. And I really hope sincerely that he pulls them out on the first tee.
Exactly.
Like while Peyton is over his ball.
Exactly.
And walk over to him and shows
him.
To him.
Walk over and just give him a little, some swing tips or something, and then just he's in his head right from the go.
That's television right there. And of course, Tiger and Phil have their own history, but
well, that's where I was going. That's where I was going. Is that Tiger is one of the ones that can kind of flex the same way on Phil, the way that Brady can on Peyton. And so having
you think that's why they matched up that way?
I don't know. I mean, maybe, but that's to have that kind of dynamic there where Tommy can be chirping at Brady the entire time, but then Tiger's just giving it to Phil the other way. You know,
right.
But that's where depending on the access to it. I mean, I'm not gonna pay for it to watch it, but if it's on, that is something I think that would be kind of intriguing to watch.
Yeah, and I think they'd be foolish not to just put it on television. You can make your money if they put it on pay-per-view to raise money or whatever.
Yeah,
I'm sure you could find a sponsor for something like that for whatever amount you want to raise. That's a huge event, and the number that it would pull on NBC on a Sunday afternoon would be enormous, because not only I think you show the entire round, right? You have to show the entire round, and on NBC, what would that take? 4 hours?
Yeah, it'd have to
like
be.
You could turn it into this. You could turn it into an entire afternoon of just this, and people would watch it. I think it'd be foolish not to put it on normal TV, on antenna TV. But I'm not sure if it is or not. We'll have to check into that.
Yeah,
it's not until the 24th, so we got a little time before it goes down.
Yeah, we'll get into that a little bit more. My last thing, I just hope that it's unedited. I hope it's not sanitized, and I hope that those guys just let it fly. I hope that they just act like there's no
that's why you
cameras and
can't have it on
microphones around.
NBC.
Well, I know, but I just
You're
hope that
you're killing me.
I just hope that they just let it loose, and I hope it's just no filter from those guys, because I think that's what would make it intriguing.
Well,
if it's just them just kind of glad handing.
When you put it like that, then now I would pay
couple bucks
I might pay
or something,
$20. I might 10 or 20. I don't know. I would pay. I might think about it. Now, if it's unedited and just.
And you knew that they were going to go all in on the
shit
talking.
Yeah. Like that would be. I would pay to watch that. I would.
Well,
maybe $20.
Yeah, I think 20 is probably the cap on that. We'll see where coronavirus is. Maybe we have a small get together for that and split those costs. $20. But so speaking of notorious shit talkers, Philip Rivers is a head coach in waiting. The quarterback of the Indianapolis Colts, which sounds weird. When talking about Big
It's
Phil,
weird to say for sure.
Is what is it? The coach of St. Michael Catholic in Alabama. That's pretty cool. I mean, I don't know. I mean, is the entire offense his children at that school, or what's going on there?
Yeah, he just needs 2 more to fill out the whole rest of the team.
Yeah.
I think 2 more kiddos. But his dad was a football coach, following his dad's footsteps there. I think it's great. Would you be fired up to play for Philip Rivers, man? How fired up would you be to play for Phil?
That's what I think. I think he'd be a hell of a football coach. Yeah, he definitely will be getting fired up. I think the name that comes to mind when thinking of this kind of situation, I think it was John Kitna. He was a backup. I mean, obviously a backup late in his career. I think it might have been when he was with the Cowboys, and kind of picked up some coaching gigs in the DFW area, and I think has worked his way into some. I'll have to go back and look at this, but has actually risen up the coaching ranks fairly quickly with the success that he's had. So we'll see how it plays out for Philip. I mean, that could be, he's another guy like we talked about with Frank Gore earlier, that he's not leaving football, and that's why he's already got a head coaching gig lined up for when he's done
playing. That's a guy that's for life. Yeah, he's a lifer for sure. But that's nice to know that you had that stability coming out of the game when you're ready to go. Your family knows where they're going to be. Like, all of that stuff is in place, and I know that's super important for him, as I think it would be for most people. So
yeah, I mean, when you have like 14 children, I mean, that's pretty important.
Yeah, when you have a house, when you need to know what size house you need to have for 27 kids, it's sort of you need to know where you can't just pick up and move that size family, Swiss Family Robinson on a whim.
Oh, yeah.
So, but hey, I want to get what's the special surprise, man? Let's you tease it at the beginning.
Perfect timing. So I'll preface this. We've had so much success from the first few episodes. The feedback has been huge. We didn't get any questions on the comments quite yet, so hopefully those will start coming in the next few weeks. But actually received a gift from one of our listeners. This was sent in. We have right here bacon and eggs coffee mugs that were sent in.
Right.
I'll get one of these to you, Jay, when we're able to get together after this whole COVID thing. But I thought that was great. Nice little gesture from one of our devoted listeners. So
excellent. Well,
nice little surprise. The fans are going crazy for the show, and we're gonna hopefully keep providing some good content for y'all. And please like it and subscribe. Anything else you want to tack on the end of this one, Jay?
No, man, I think that's good. I think we covered the bases today. It's going to be a beautiful day. I'm looking forward to spending some time outside. We're going to fire up the dartboard later on. Maybe even play a little bit of the ring game there.
Oh, man.
Ring. Do the ring.
Love that.
Throws on the little hook. Yeah, might do a little bit of that, but we'll definitely be spending some time outside. What's on tap for you guys this afternoon?
Probably just getting outside. I think it's going to be ham o'clock here pretty soon.
Very
Gonna
nice.
throw the hammock up and
Understandable.
get out there on this nice, cool, relatively cool May day, and just relax. What else can we do?
Yeah, it's going to be a good one, man. Good stuff today, man. I'll enjoy it. Looking forward to doing it again next time.
Sounds good, man. See you next week.
All right, man. Late.
Peace.
ATX representing. Fatal, baby.
Falling on 6th on a Saturday. Can the drippin' swing a swing down, let me play.